So you're having kind of a monster run between your Jurassic World and your Godzilla 98s.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm rewatching the Jurassic World movies because I'm seeing Jurassic World Dominion on Tuesday. Uh,
Nice.
and they're bad. They're bad movies, guys. So, no, I've been in this Jurassic Park. I don't know if my first column will run at this point, but I've been rereading the Jurassic Park books, and I've been in this whole Jurassic Park rabbit hole. So yeah, so I rewatched a couple Jurassic World movies, and I watched 1998's Godzilla.
So this was the first time I had seen Godzilla in a long time.
Yeah,
I have very vivid memories of the lead up and anticipation to this movie and the marketing, and size does matter as being like kind of the slogan.
yeah.
And
Remember
the
the foot?
thing that I thought was so funny about this movie was so it came out in right around my birthday, right around my 16th birthday in 98. And there was a new sparkly movie theater called the Randhurst 16 over by me. And they opened in like late 96, but it was like real nice. And it was the first theater I'd ever been to with stadium seating. So it was like, wow, this is great. This is
You say
the
it was
wave
the
of the
best?
future.
Would you say that the best view of Hollywood was?
Was from the Randhurst 16. Yeah. So Godzilla, so for the better part of a year and a half, like if you have like the biggest movie out there, like your Men in Blacks or your The Lost Worlds or Titanic, max 4 screens of the 16.
Okay.
But when Godzilla opened, they made a point of playing it every 20 minutes, and it was on 9 or 10 screens of the 16.
Was it
And
this was the first one that did that?
Yeah. And I remember going with my friends opening night. It was like a Wednesday night. And we were just like, we got to get there early. It's going to be sold out. It's like, it's crazy. And this was sort of the first indicator, which would come into play later with like the Gareth Edwards Godzilla and Godzilla King of the Monsters and Godzilla versus Kong. I don't think these movies are as mainstream as like Hollywood wants them to be. They're kind of a niche market. So when
Yes.
we got to the theater for Godzilla 98 and it was like 10 of us, it was like, wow, this movie's gonna tank. And it was sort of and I remember the reviews didn't come out like by the time the movie came out, it was either like the day before or like the day of. They kind of held those back. So for Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin coming off of Independence Day for this much hyped movie, it was like, wow, they're really trying to hide the quality of this. And it got proven very quickly when we were watching Godzilla.
It's such a strange thing because I was thinking the exact same thing, which is like, okay, this is their follow up to Independence Day, right? This is disaster movie, same way, proven concept, quote unquote. It's a franchise that was TriStar, right?
Yeah.
That had the rights since like the late '90s or the early '90s. I was reading, and like Jan de
Mhm.
Bont was going to direct it at one point. Eventually, Emmerich takes it on. I'm watching this movie and I'm thinking to myself, well, this is dog shit. This is just a pile of shit. And it's atonal and the characters are uncompelling and the action is not really there and all that. And I'm thinking to myself, what are the core differences between this and Independence Day?
Oh,
What
interesting. Okay.
what is it that makes this movie so much worse? Because if you put the two next to each other, right?
Mhm.
You take somebody who's very cynical, maybe, or somebody who's just kind of like, they're all the same, like your uncle on the couch or whatever, whatever. He's doing this with his thumb, I guess, to indicate the remote control. I don't know why I did this.
Classic remote uncle.
Classic remote uncle, right? And he's like, they're all the same, it's crashing and people running and yelling and screaming. What
Mhm.
is it that makes Independence Day a really strong kind of piece of schlock, like a really good, entertaining blockbuster? And this one just not compelling at all, and so much of a slog. This one, like I was just watching it, it's like we're still watching this. This is still on. This is
Yeah.
still happening, and
Yeah.
I don't know what you think, because my first thought, of course, is the cast, right? Whereas before
Mhm.
you've got Goldblum, you've got Will Smith, you've got Bill Pullman, you've got an incredibly compelling cast, and then meanwhile over here you've got the cast of The Simpsons doing live action work, and you've got Matthew Broderick.
Yeah. That's a good place to start because whereas, granted, Will Smith was well, in part mostly well known for Fresh Prince of Bel-Air by the time he did Independence Day. There was Bad Boys and like a few
Yeah.
other smaller movies he did before that, but like he was the Fresh Prince.
Right.
But he was surrounded by like film actors and other movie stars, and I think a big problem with Godzilla is, especially when you look back on it in 2022, this is like the cast of several NBC sitcoms,
Exactly.
and or like people who would be in pilots that don't get picked up, like Maria Patillo and Vicki Lewis and Hank Azaria, and then of course, as you said, Nancy Cartwright and Harry Shearer, and then your gravitas actors are Broderick, who can be good in the right role, but he's not a lead of a blockbuster.
No,
And
not
Jean
this.
Reno, who is fine, but like he's the guy that you want sort of in the Mission Impossible kind of power ranking, where you want him like 5th or 6th down, not number 2.
I say this with love. Jean Reno is either first build or he's fifth build.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's, obviously you've got the professional, like he's a great actor. He's really, really compelling screen presence. But yeah, him backing up Matthew Broderick is an interesting choice. And this is such a, Spielberg always talks about with Jaws, and as I mentioned before with Jurassic Park, like he always said, I know that the attraction is going to be the monster, the shark, the dinosaurs. I don't need to cast huge stars in this. I can just cast very good actors. And it seems like in this one, they were like, well, we know that Godzilla is going to be the star, so let's just cast, I don't know, they're on the TV, like who's on TV.
It's just so, it doesn't feel like film acting in a lot of scenes, which is an odd complaint, but when we spend so much time with these characters, especially in the beginning, it only becomes more glaring as a problem.
When you don't have the sort of driving narrative force of like, okay, the aliens, we're gonna get the aliens. Everybody agrees that the aliens are bad and we should get the aliens. This movie is like, is Godzilla good? Is he bad? Is he an enemy? Is he just an animal that wants to like hunt things? Like they all go back and forth on it, and it never really takes a side, and you're never really 100% sure. At the end, there's that sort of compelling moment where Godzilla falls and Broderick is standing there looking at him, and even though the movie is pushing you toward like the drama, the monster has fallen and this, it's like, I don't know what to feel right now. I don't know what I'm supposed to be feeling about this. I don't know how he feels about this.
I will say though, I think this movie is interesting in a sense of like a case study against other Godzilla movies, because I think other Godzilla movies are much more pious about Godzilla as a property.
And we should probably talk about that.
Yeah. And he's often like a hero, and he's pitted against worse monsters, so like he's the savior. In this case, it's just kind of he's the standalone threat, so he's much more the villain or like the tragic figure like a King Kong than he is like fighting on behalf of humanity or the human race.
No idea how to feel about him.
So I agree with you on that, but I think it's interesting, I guess, as a point of comparison to like other Godzilla movies where they're kind of more samey in terms of like how they treat their point of view towards Godzilla, and this one is more or less Cloverfield. My biggest problem with the movie, as much as like it's the characters, I think the biggest problem with it is just the structure of the movie. Like it is so endless because of how they set it up. So like the first 45 minutes is the Jurassic Park build. Then there's the Godzilla reveal. I think that sequence where he's kind of like on the loose for the first time and within Manhattan is probably one of the better sequences of the movie. There's problems with it, like they're obviously shooting it in the dark with a lot of rain to mask the early CGI.
Right.
I think it's funny that Godzilla is fucking ripped. Like in this, like Godzilla's fat, but like in this movie, Godzilla is like he went to the personal trainer and they're just like, let's go. It's like pumping up the guns.
He's in a bulk. He's in a bulk. He hasn't cut yet. He hasn't started his cut.
Godzilla's CrossFit in this one. But then, like we go away from that, and then there's like the first sight of Godzilla. Then we've got the endless sequence in Madison Square Garden where it's just the Velociraptor scene in the compound in Jurassic Park. And then we've got and then we've got Godzilla coming back, rising from the dead, and that's another long scene. And it just
goes
is
on
exhausting.
And
and like you can do this, like James Cameron did it great in Aliens, where it's like you have multiple climaxes and everything like that. But Roland Emmerich is not James Cameron.
We should put that on the poster. Roland Emmerich is not James Cameron.
Yeah.
No, it was completely, and you know, and also I was thinking a lot about, and again, to go back to the characters, like the military in this movie are just completely inept, like completely. I mean, from the jump, they are completely inept. They're laughable characters. They fuck everything up. You don't. I mean, you could argue with, you know, go back to Independence Day again, just as the closest point of comparison. You know, you can argue for or against whatever military propaganda in that movie or whatever, but the idea is like the president is a compelling character in that movie. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The you know, we care for those fighter pilots, right? We want them to succeed. We see what they go through. We see their skill. We see their talent. This one is just like, they're just bumbling. Like you mentioned the second in command earlier. They make the wrong decision every time, and it's not that pointed sort of Oliver Stoney kind of satire thing. It's like, no, they just suck. Like, this is just what they do, and it's terrible, and I hate all these characters, and I don't want any of them to succeed.
Yeah, and I like the point that you made where, you know, Godzilla is killed at the end of the movie on the Brooklyn Bridge, and it's just like, you get kind of like a tinge of sadness, but you're just like, but this movie didn't earn any
this movie
of it.
Didn't earn that.
It's like the only thing, what you're responding to being sad is that, like, they're repeatedly shooting an animal with rockets to death. It's like really odd because I don't know. And then another thing is, you know, you have a different perspective on this because you're a lifelong East Coaster. I'll say this as somebody who lived in the Midwest their entire life. Movies like this really informed what I thought New Yorkers were like. So like I would see something like Godzilla or Seinfeld or like You've Got Mail and stuff, or Keeping the Faith. And then like by the time I got to New York, I was just like, I know what all these people are like. And like it's like I'm so close-minded about it because I'm just like, they're all like Hank Azaria.
Hey, over there, what's over there? Hey, come here, get over here. I do have to ask you though, as a resident soundtrack man.
Oh, I wanted to bring this up too, so I'm glad that you're doing
Let's talk Puff Daddy.
Okay, hot take.
Yeah.
So, okay, I all right. First off, I love when people are all like, there's only two types of people in this world, and then they give like two arbitrary, like, you know, sides of it. So I was joking with you, like with Miles Teller, because of The Offer and Top Gun Maverick. It's like you're either a Ruddy or a Rooster, and it's just nonsense. But like, I'll put it to you.
No, Ruddy, it's beautiful. Ruddy, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's a love story. It's a love story. It's beautiful story.
So you're either a come with me or a heroes person. So I was looking at the soundtrack before we recorded.
Yeah.
If we're just looking at bands, it's pretty impressive.
Run it down for me because I don't have the soundtrack list in front of me.
Okay, so from memory, there is like, you know, you got Puff Daddy with Jimmy Page. That's Come With Me. That was the lead single. You've got Heroes, which was sort of like the second breakout of the soundtrack by the Wallflowers. There's songs by Jamiroquai. There's Ben Folds 5. There's a remix of Brain Stew by Green Day. There's the Foo Fighters. Like there's a lot of decent bands on there. I've never sat and listened to the Godzilla soundtrack front to back, but I will say I kind of have a soft spot for Come With Me because it is so bad that it crosses over like this plane of just coolness into like being so lame that it's awful. Okay, I'm glad I remembered this. So I'm gonna go back to this screening on opening night.
Okay.
So I'm in a theater with like, you know, 10 to 20 people all together, and like nobody's vibing this movie at all. But it comes to the point where Godzilla's loose in Manhattan and he breathes fire for the first time. And this guy, like 2 rows in front of us, just goes, yes, yes. And I always think of him whenever I'm watching like any movie and there's like the big moment, like the big nerd moment. I'm always just like, this is for that guy.
Yeah.
We talked about a bad monster movie. To close it out, do you have a recommendation of like any monster movie that you would say like, hey, people should seek this out on Monster Day?
Buddy, I think it might be a movie that you and I both enjoy, and that's Colossal.
Oh my God, that's a great choice. That was my favorite movie of 2017.
Yeah, which I
So
myself
good.
have not rewatched. It's up there somewhere. I have not rewatched it. I don't think I've rewatched it since I bought the Blu-ray. So I may find myself rewatching Colossal. We were struck by that movie.
That is like an ingenious way of doing an allegory using a kaiju movie.
It rules. That movie's great.
It's fantastic. And then the one I'll recommend is, I think a lot of people, at least in our community, have seen it, but like if you haven't seen The Mist, you should definitely watch The Mist, because unlike a lot of monster movies, this one doesn't let you off the hook, and it's like really creepy and gets under your skin.
Oh yeah, Miss Rules. All
Yeah.
right, so we'll be back next week. Which a tall order. We're catching some big ones this June exploitation. I don't know what's going on
Yeah.
Thursdays, but we're catching some big ones. We'll be back with 80s action next week.
Yep.
Title to be determined because it's a lot of pressure.
It'll probably just be Highlander
It'll
again.
probably just be Highlander. But until 80s Action Day,
Come with me. Da-na-na, 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 da-na-na. We could be heroes one day.